now.
One moment.
Guys, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Excellent, guys. Okay, just enjoy the class, guys. And remember, if you have some questions, you can turn the microphone and ask your question to the teacher, or you can write your question in the chat, okay? And the teacher going to be answer your question, okay?
Glad we get the rest of Claudio here, man.
Okay, guys, enjoy. Adnan?
Yes, could you please enable the screen sharing option? I'm trying to
Yeah,
share
it's
this.
ready. It's ready for you.
Yeah, you can start now.
Yes, okay, it's working now. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Okay, I'm about to share the screen and apologize for being late. There was some unexpected problem with the internet connection, but I'm glad it's fine now. Okay, so I am sharing the screen and we are about to start our today's lecture. Okay, here we go. Okay, so in today's lesson, we will talk about the biosphere, the ecosystems, and the interactions among living populations that make up the ecosystem or the biosphere. So before we begin, does anyone have any idea that what a biosphere is? Anyone? Or the ecosystems? Environmental. Danny said environmental. Yes, but what is the biosphere? A biosphere or the ecosystem? The places where the animals live, okay? And what about the plants? Okay, you guys have some idea, so let's jump into it and let us see. I hope it will further clear your questions. Okay, so the biosphere and the ecosystems. Bio, whenever you see this word bio, it states life, okay? Bio means life. When we are studying biology, so we study about life. Bio means life and logy means to study. And sphere is a globe-shaped body, a circle like a ball, okay? So biosphere, so like living an environment. Danny said like living an environment. Yeah, excellent. You guys know about this already a bit. Okay, so a biosphere is also known as the ecosphere, okay? So all the places on the planet where there are living organisms that makes up the biosphere, okay? So each and every place on the planet Earth, on our planet, so where the living organisms live, if it is an ocean or like rivers, seas, underwater, or on the top of the mountains, on grounds, like on jungles, on the trees, all the things. So when you combine them, they are called biosphere, okay? So the biosphere is made up of the parts of Earth where life exists, okay? It can be inside a mountain, it can be inside the stone, under the soil, anywhere, yes, animals, anywhere the life exists on the planet Earth, that is called a biosphere, okay? So the biosphere extends from the deepest root systems, you know, the trees have roots and microorganisms that you cannot see, they live there, and the birds within the trees and the oceans, the fish. Yes, any existing thing on Earth, but it has to be living thing, okay, Danny? It has to be a living thing. All the living things living anywhere on the planet Earth, all together, they make up the biosphere, okay? So humans, animals, and plants. Very good. So the biosphere and the ecosystems. So you can see here, we have this is called a biosphere. So biosphere consists of three main types. Okay, the hydrosphere. By hydro we mean water, and sphere I explained like a ball. It represents our planet. So it is a hydrosphere. So the fish live in the hydrosphere. And the lithosphere, the land where you and I are living, we have built houses on, we have homes on the ground. We live in a house. I am sitting in my room. Okay, you guys are sitting in your school or in your room. So this is called a lithosphere, lithosphere. Okay, so this is also a component, a part of a biosphere. And the third one is the atmosphere. Okay, so it is composed of air or different types of gases. So all these things, when they are combined together, they are called a biosphere. So if I ask you that where the biosphere starts and where does it end, so it does not have a specific starting or an ending. We can just make a guess. Like the actual thickness of the biosphere on Earth is difficult to measure. Birds can fly at altitudes as high as 1,800 meters. When you go out, when you see a bird in the sky, so that is also a biosphere, right? So how high a bird can fly? So they have been seen flying around like 1,800 meters high from the ground, or 5,900 feet, or 1.1 miles. Okay, and fish live as much as like 8,000 meters below, like on the ocean, on the surface of the ocean. Okay, underwater. So in a Puerto Rico trench, that is the deepest part of the ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. So we can say that the biosphere starts from 8,372 meters below the ground, and it goes all the way up to 1,800 meters above, where the birds fly. So all this area, that is a biosphere. Biosphere comes from things that are possible or exist in real life. Yes, that's another possibility. So let's move on. So as I said, that biosphere contains many ecosystems, and I think there's could you please, yeah, Stephen, could you please mute your mic? Okay, that it's fine now. Thank you. So I was saying that the biosphere consists of many ecosystems, and now let us move on to see what is an ecosystem. So an ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other living organisms or non-living, as well as weather and landscapes, work together to form a bubble of life. Okay, so this is the definition of the ecosystem. If you see this question in your exam, that define ecosystem, or what an ecosystem is, so you can write this definition here. An ecosystem is a geographic area where plants, animals, and other organisms, as well as weather and landscapes, work together to form a bubble of life. I will explain it in a minute. So there is another definition that you can safely write. An ecosystem consists of all the organisms and the physical environment with which they interact. Okay, so an ecosystem, like if I give you a simple example of an ecosystem, that would be a dustbin in your kitchen. That is also an ecosystem. Okay, so we have many different types of ecosystems on the planet, and they all they interact together. Okay, so a dustbin that is in your kitchen or in your room, it contains microorganisms. Okay, it contains living things that you cannot see. So when you throw something in that dustbin, so the bacteria, the microorganisms, they decompose it. Okay, so they treat it as food. So like, for example, you are peeling a mango or a banana and you are throwing the skin of the banana in the dustbin, or the food that you couldn't finish, so that goes into the dustbin. Okay, or the bad vegetables. So the microorganisms, they eat that food and they reproduce, and the boundaries of that dustbin, so all that things which are inside that dustbin, they are the ecosystem. A simple dustbin represents an ecosystem. Okay, so now we can go to the types of the ecosystem on a bigger scale. So we have a terrestrial ecosystems, we have forest ecosystems, we have grassland ecosystem, we have a desert ecosystem. Okay, so a terrestrial ecosystem is like bacteria is a part of ecosystem. Yes, Danny, it is a part of bacteria is a part of the ecosystem, and the plastic and the waste, so they are all interacting with each other. So they are all decomposed, they make the ecosystem. So what is a terrestrial ecosystem? Anyone? Do you guys have any idea what a terrestrial ecosystem is? Can you give me an example of the terrestrial ecosystem? Do you guys know what terrestrial is? What do we mean by terrestrial? Yes, biotic and abiotic, we will come to that, but what is a terrestrial? Well, we can safely say a land. Okay, you and I are living on a terrestrial ecosystem. Okay, we are living on the land. Yeah, the forests are also on the earth. So we have a forest ecosystem, right? We have a grassland ecosystem. When you go to the lawn or to a park and you see grass, so there are lots of insects that live inside that grass, and they interact with the environment. They take up oxygen from the atmosphere. Okay, so all these things, they make up the ecosystem. Desert. So what is desert made of? Anyone? Lots of sand, right? So the sand, and another property of the desert is high temperature, right?
Adnan, are you there? Teacher Adnan. Guys, wait for the teacher. Something is wrong in the teacher connection, but just wait, okay? We're going to restart. Until this moment, the class is good for you? Do you understand everything, guys? Excellent. Good, guys. Just learn and enjoy, okay? Yes, it's the internet connection that the teacher don't have some good connection, but he going to restart. He coming in a couple of minutes, okay? Just wait, guys. Please wait. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but you know, is here the teacher. The teacher is here.
Okay, let's continue. I need access to share the screen, please.
Welcome back, teacher Atman.
So thank you. So we were discussing about the different types of ecosystems. So we have a terrestrial ecosystem, forest ecosystem, a grassland ecosystem, and a desert ecosystem. Okay, so a desert is also an ecosystem where lots of insects and animals, they live, they interact with each other. So all that that makes up an ecosystem. Okay, so now we are moving towards the components of ecosystem. So what are the components of ecosystem? We have biotic and abiotic. So sometimes they are called the components of the ecosystem, and sometimes they are called factors. Okay, so the factors of ecosystem, a biotic factor or abiotic factor. So what are these? So let us see. So biotic, as I said before, that bio means life, and a biotic is anything that is living. Okay, so in an ecosystem, if something is living thing, that is called a biotic. So biotic component refers to the living organisms in an ecology, where abiotic refers, while abiotic refers to the non-living things. Yes, very good. So non-bio or non-living things, and biotic or living things. Excellent. So these biotic and abiotic interactions maintain the equilibrium in the environment. So equilibrium is just another word for balance. Like they keep balance in the ecosystem. Okay, so let us see further into the biotic factors. Okay, so biotic components, as I said, these are the living things that have a direct or indirect influence on other organisms in an environment. For example, plants, animals, and microorganisms and their waste materials. Okay, so all these components, they are called, they make up the biotic components of the ecosystem. Okay, is it clear so far? Any questions related to biotic or ecosystem or a biosphere? Okay, let's move on. If you have any questions, you can ask, or you can type it in the chat box. Okay. So now we are going a little bit into the detail of the biotic components, that what are the biotic components. So we can divide them, into three types, into three different categories, right? So the producers, consumers, and we have decomposers that we will see in a minute. So what are producers? So these include all the autotrophs. So what are autotrophs, or what are producers? Producers are those living organisms that make up the food with the help of the sunlight, right? So they automatically they create the food, they make the food for themselves. And the best example is plants. They do not eat, literally eat anything. Yeah, like the heterotrophs. So the autotrophs, so they make the food with the help of the sunlight. So the sun is the main source of energy. So they produce their own food by photosynthesis. Yes. So all those living organisms that make their food with the help of the photosynthesis, they are called the autotrophs, right? So they use light energy. They use light energy and synthesize food in their own, on their own, plants or the green algae. Yes, they rely mostly on sunlight. So these are the producers. And why do we call these producers? We will see that in a minute. Then we have consumers. So consumers are those biotic components, those living organisms that depend on the producers, or they consume the producers. So these include all the heterotrophs. Yes, that absorb things. Yes, sort of. Yes. So they consume. The consume is a better word, right? So from consume, you can remember consumers. So these include all the heterotrophs that, or the heterotrophs that directly or indirectly depend on the producers for their food. Consumers are further categorized as herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and parasites. So far in the biotic components, we have studied the producers and the consumers. So producers are those living organisms that make up their food by photosynthesis with the help of the sunlight, and consumers, they consume the producers. They are dependent. They are dependent on the producers. They cannot make their own foods, and they are called the heterotrophs. And the third component of the biotic factor is, the biotic component is the decomposers. So these includes saprophytes, which act on dead matter and decay them for their nutrition. In the soil or on the roots of the trees, we have these microorganisms that we cannot see with our naked eye. So these are the smallest living organisms, and they decompose the dead organic matter. When the living things die, for whether it's a vegetable, you throw it out, it goes underground, and it is decomposed. Okay. So in our first lecture, we studied that living things are made up of oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. So the decomposers, they split the carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen from that dead organic matter. Okay. So here's a picture of the biotic factors. So I discussed the three types. We have producers, we have consumers, and we have decomposers. So you can see here, so the producers, they are made up of, like, the category is entirely made up of plants. So these are the autotrophic living organisms that make up their own food with the help of the sunlight. Is a first stage in recycling. Yes, sort of. So producers. Then we have consumers. So you can see all these animals and organisms, including a human. So the consumers, they depend on these the trees, or we can say the producers. Okay. And these are the decomposers. So these decomposers, when the producers and the consumers, they die, and they recycle, as Danny said. Excellent, very well, well done, Danny. So these living, or these microorganisms, what do? They recycle the complex organic substances back to the environment. Okay, they decompose the complex organic molecules, and they separate carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, and these atoms, these elements are released back into the ecosystem. So they sort of keep balance, and these are called recyclers. Decomposers are also known as the recyclers. Okay, so biotic factors, producers, consumers, decomposers. Now let's move on. Okay, there's another picture of the ecosystem. Okay, so you can see here that the tree is a producer. Why? Because it is an autotroph, and it is producing oxygen. And then we have consumers here, a squirrel and a fox. So a squirrel is like directly dependent on a producer. She's eating vegetables or plant leaves, and a fox can eat the squirrel. Okay, so this is a secondary consumer. So a secondary consumer eats a primary consumer. And we have like rain coming down, there is water, and at the roots we have the soil decomposers, the bacteria, the small microorganisms that we just discussed. So we have sun, we have energy, we have carbon dioxide. So can anyone tell me the abiotic factors from this picture? Anyone? What are the abiotic factors? Or like anyone? Which component in this picture is an abiotic? Excellent, yes, it's Camila, the tree. But the tree is living thing. Tree is not an abiotic. The water is abiotic, yes. Oxygen is abiotic. Sun, the energy, these are the abiotic components. The sunlight, the soil. Soil can also be referred as the abiotic factor. Okay, well done. Okay, now let's move on to the abiotic factor, and we will see them in the detail. Okay, so the abiotic components of the ecosystem include all the chemical and physical elements and the non-living components, right? So the atmosphere, sunlight, rain, clouds, water. So not the fish in the water, the fish is biotic, remember that, okay? Just the water is abiotic component. So abiotic components can vary from region to region, from one ecosystem to another. So initially, I gave you the example of a dustbin. So a dustbin, you know, it does not contain any rain or any clouds, okay? So these the abiotic factors of a dustbin would be the plastic that you throw inside, or the container that makes up the dustbin, the paper that goes inside, okay, or the waste food, like yeah, different types of things that we throw in the dustbin, which are non-living things. So they mainly take up the role of the supporter, of the life supporter. So what a abiotic component does is that it supports an ecosystem. For example, we would go back to the previous slide, and this is the picture of an ecosystem with biotic and abiotic factors. And the sunlight or the heat is an abiotic factor. So what is the role of the sunlight? It is supporting this entire ecosystem. Without this sunlight or the energy, the producers will not be able to produce their food, and the entire ecosystem will collapse. Okay, or for example, with this particular ecosystem, like if it doesn't rain, so even we have the sunlight, but if the tree doesn't get water, the tree will die of thirst. Okay, so water is also essential for the ecosystem to survive, and without the abiotic factors, the living factors, the biotic factors, they cannot function. So biotic factors and abiotic factors, they are all and the equally important. We cannot say that, oh, this thing is a non-living thing, so it is not important, I don't care. So that's not the case. So both the biotic, living things, abiotic, non-living things, excuse me, and they work together and they support the entire ecosystem, and they, we can say, support life, or support the entire ecosystem. They make life possible in the biosphere. Okay, so these are some of the components of the abiotic factors. So wind, water, atmosphere, the clouds, the sunlight, soil, temperature. So all these things, they are important for the survival of the ecosystem. For example, if it gets very cold, like some parts of Canada, the temperature drops up to -50, -40 Celsius. And but after some time, the seasons change, and the heat or the sunlight comes back. So temperature fluctuation is also very important. So if the temperature stays very low, so it is not good for the ecosystem. It will have a bad impact. So all the plants will die of the cold, and the animals will not be able to function properly. So a balanced temperature, a balanced water, a balanced wind, and a balanced sunlight, all these abiotic factors, they are very, very important, as important as the biotic factors. Okay, so now we have the interactions among the living populations. So what are these interactions among the living populations in the ecosystem? So we have a picture here, and I will explain with the help of this picture. This is called the food chain. Okay, so all these are organisms, they are connected to each other, and these are the interactions among the living populations which support the ecosystem. So on the left-hand side, we have producers, we have plants, we have lettuce, we have some sort of vegetable or a plant, we have wheat that we make bread with. So these are all producers. They are autotrophs. They make their own like food and with the help of sunlight, and they do not depend on anything else. So now we have slugs. So what a slug or a snail will eat this vegetable, and it depends on this green vegetable, and the slug depends on this lettuce. So we have a beetle here. So the insects, they eat these plants. So what happens next? So the organisms that eat the vegetables or the producer directly, they are called the primary consumers, right? And now we have fish. So what will happen? So when the fish preys on the slug or the smaller fish, okay? And then we have a seagull here, a bird. So it eats the fish, okay? So you can see that there is a connection from this plant, the autotroph, all the way to this bird. If you remove these two, if you remove a slug, a fish cannot survive and a seagull cannot survive. So this is the interaction in the ecosystem, and all the things are connected, and all the things, they depend on each other. Okay, so why the seagull will die? Because a seagull is a tertiary consumer, and a seagull cannot eat this vegetable directly. Is it getting clear? Is it clear?
Guys, is clear, or do you have any question? Just turn the microphone.
Can you repeat that, please?
All the guys say yes.
Okay, let me repeat. Let me repeat. Okay, so what is happening here? So all these living organisms, they are dependent on each other. I was explaining that we have these vegetables here. Okay, so they are autotrophs. What do we mean by autotrophs, Stephen? Can you answer the autotrophs? What are autotrophs? Anyone?
Different types of living organisms.
Please repeat.
Different types of living organisms.
No, I'm afraid that's not that correct. Autotrophs. Let me explain. That's all right. Let me explain it to you, Stephen. Autotrophs are plants that can make their own food. Okay, with the help of the sunlight, the photosynthesis. They make their food with the help of the sunlight. Is it clear? Plants. Plants do not eat anything. They just take up the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and sunlight, and they just give you fruits. Have you ever seen a plant eating an animal or a sandwich? Have you ever seen a plant eating a burger or drinking a soda? No. So how do the plants survive? So with the help of the photosynthesis. Okay. So all those living organisms, the plants that make their own food, they are called autotrophs. I hope it's clear now.
Yes, it's clear. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. If you do not understand, so please ask, okay? Don't be shy, participate in the class and ask so that you can learn, and you can, like, don't stay confused, okay? So,
Yes,
so we have a slug here. This is an insect. So an insect eats plant, okay? So an insect, a small insect, cannot eat a burger or a pizza. Okay, so all it can eat is this little plant. So the fish can eat this insect or the slug, or a fish can eat a smaller fish, and this bird eats the fish. The bird cannot eat this plant directly. Okay, so if you remove these two, so this organism will die. Okay, why the seagull, why this bird will die? Because these two, because this bird cannot eat this plant directly. Okay, birds do not eat plants directly. They cannot eat plants. Is it clear?
yes, to me.
Yes, so now look here. Here is a beetle. So the beetle eats this plant, and then there is a frog. So a frog eats this beetle. A frog cannot eat this plant. Okay, so the beetle is dependent on this plant, and the frog is dependent on this beetle. If you remove this beetle, this frog will die. Okay, so that is why it is important for the frog to survive that beetle must exist, and the beetle is eating the plant. Natural things depend on living organisms. Yes, true, but there is a connection. Okay, so now this bird, this is an eagle, so this bird eats this frog and it survives. So if you remove this frog, so this bird will die. Okay, so this is the interaction among the living populations. So we can see here, again, we have a country mouse. we have wheat, and we have snake. So in order to survive, for the survival of the snake, it is important that the mouse must exist, the frog must exist. Okay, this bird must exist because the snake, it can eat a mouse, it can eat a frog, it can eat a bird, and it can eat a seagull as well. Okay, so these are all the interactions among the populations. And let me add in, sorry?
So if the snake doesn't eat the mouse, the snake will die?
No, the snake will not die. If you remove this mouse, okay, the snake cannot eat vegetables directly.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. So now let me add another picture here and categorize these all these living organisms in in their respective division, like omnivores and herbivores. Just give me a minute. So any questions so far related to what we have studied?
No.
Okay, is it clear? Okay, let me ask a question. What are the components of an ecosystem in a forest? A forest is an ecosystem, right? So what do you see in a forest? What are the biotic components and abiotic components of a forest? Anyone? Do you guys know what a forest is? Yes, Danny is saying trees, water. Okay, good. Are these biotic or abiotic? Danny, you said that jungle, biotic, trees, birds, insects, and other animals. Camila, excellent. Yes, biotic. And what will be the abiotic factors of the jungle of a forest? Non-living things or organisms, for example. Water, temperature, wind, oxygen, rocks, soil. Very good, very good. That's an excellent answer. I think we can safely move on. It's clear to you guys now. Very good. Biotic and abiotic factors, non-living elements. Excellent. Okay, so I have a picture here. Let me zoom it in. So we have different types of living organisms that depend on each other. So we have a carnivore, we have a herbivore, and we have an omnivore. So what are these? So let us review one by one. A carnivore, okay? So a carnivore is an animal that eats other animals, like that eats meat or flesh. Meat eaters, very good. Danny, your participation is excellent. I encourage other students also to participate. A carnivore is a living organism that eats other animals like wolf, snake, a crocodile, lion, okay, a tiger, and the penguin. So all these animals, they only eat other animals. They do not eat any vegetables, okay? So what is a herbivore? Plant eaters. A herbivore is an animal that eats plants. Here are some of examples: cow, sheep, rabbit, horse, deer, and a gorilla. Okay, there are different examples. There can be different examples. So they are the plant eaters or the grass eaters. And herb, H-E-R-B. Okay, herb is like a plant. So herbivore, V-O-R-E, vor represents eating. So a carnivore, a herbivore, and an omnivore. So what is an omnivore? Omnivore are the animals that can eat both plants and animals. Okay. So like humans, you guys can also eat like a salad made up of vegetables, and you guys can also eat like a steak or a chicken and all that if you guys are like not vegetarians. Okay, so an omnivore can eat both plants and animals. So in order to survive, they all depend on each other. Especially the carnivores, they depend on the herbivores because they cannot eat plants directly. So if you remove the herbivores, the carnivores will die because they cannot eat plants. Is it clear? So these are all the interactions within the a biosphere. Carnivores would become extinct. Yes, they would become extinct. Why? Because they cannot survive on plants. They cannot eat plants. That is why they would become extinct. And what do we mean by they would become extinct? Extinct means that there will no longer be a species of a specific animal non-existing, yeah, on the planet. Can you guys name any extinct animal that used to be on the planet Earth and it is not here anymore? Yes, excellent. Dinosaurs, good. Okay, so the tigers are also at the verge of extinctions and other animals as well. Okay, so and that was all for today. So now we are moving towards the lesson summary. So we started from a biosphere. What a biosphere is. So a biosphere is any place where the life exists, and it is a sum of all the ecosystems. Okay. Yeah, Danny, extinct animals lived during the age of ice and stone. Good. And what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a mix-up of living and non-living organisms that interact together. They depend on each other, and they create life, and they make life possible on Earth. So we have two components. We have biotic components. We have producers, consumers, and decomposers. And then we have biotic components. We have abiotic components. For example, we have air, we have water, we have sunlight. Okay, so all these things, they make up the abiotic components. And the interactions, so we have producers, primary consumers that eat these producers. Producers are basically autotrophs that do not depend on other animals, and they just make their food from sunlight. And then we have primary consumers. Primary consumers are basically herbivores, okay, that eat the producers. And then we have secondary consumers. That secondary consumers are those animals that cannot eat plants, and they need animals that depend on those plants. Okay, so these are the secondary consumers. And then again, we have the tertiary consumers. And all these components, they when you sum it up, it makes the food chain. Okay, and we can differentiate them into a herbivore, an omnivore, and a carnivore. So that was all from my side today. If you guys have any questions, you can ask. Last 2 to 3
Can you
minutes
go
of the class. Sorry?
Can you go over the herbivores again, please?
Herbivore. Okay, sure.
And the carnivores.
Okay. So you see here, a herbivore is an animal that eats plants. So a cow will not eat any other animal. It just eats grass. Okay. A rabbit cannot eat any other animal. A rabbit will not eat an insect. So a rabbit will only eat grass. So these are called the herbivores, the deer, a gorilla, a horse, sheep. So all those animals that only they depend on the plants, they are called herbivores. You can see this green color. So the green color is representing plants. Is it clear?
Yes, that's clear. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you look here in this picture, so a slug, a beetle. So a slug and a beetle, they both are herbivores. Why? Because they can eat these plants and they do not eat the other animals. A slug cannot eat a fish. A beetle cannot eat a frog. Okay? So the vegetarian animals are called herbivores. An omnivore, what is an omnivore? An omnivore can eat both. Okay? Yeah, they eat both. Camilla? Excellent. Clap. Yes, Danny, animals that can eat both things, plants and animals. Okay, that was all from my side. Thank you so much for the participation. And I apologize again for the disconnectivity. Okay, have a nice day. Thank you.
Excellent, teacher Atman. Congratulations. Excellent class. Guys, thanks for being here and
Thank you.
be pending for next class. Okay?
Thank you.
And thank you for your participation. You know, this is very important, your participation. Okay,
Yes.
guys, congratulations. Have a wonderful day to all of you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Miss. Bye, teacher. Bye, professor.
Bye.